King of the Pit Media, signing in. Alright. I've got a topic today that is incredibly close to my heart. A topic that fulfills my spirit and gives me vibrance. Adds colour to my life, yes? Controversial one. So, I'm going to talk about crowd killing. I'm going to talk about moshing the crowd and whichever in between. I'm going to talk about violent dancing and some experiences and my personal thoughts and insights into such, from the outside looking in, bizarre behaviour. To put a long story short, this is going to be an in defense of crowd killing video. So if you are averse to such, please continue listening because I'd be more than happy to hear some counteracting opinions, and I can most definitely understand why one would do so. But let me tell you my story. So when I got into alternate music, extreme music, I got there via the vehicle of post-hardcore, popular metalcore, or popular at the time in the mid-2000s, early to mid-2000s, deathcore, big fan of thrash metal, went to a lot of metal events, we had a great venue near mine, which is now long gone, but we had a lot of great touring death metal bands and death metal adjacent bands. So I saw a lot of good bands in the extreme sphere prior to experiencing my first taste of what could be considered hardcore adjacent music, right? I mean, first and foremost, I got kicked in between the legs at a metal event. I saw... it was a stacked bill, but we'll talk about that another time. On the bill was a band called Carnifex. Deathcore band, very heavy at times, breakdown adjacent music. I was young. Some of the older people had turned up, wanted to have a little shindig, have a little spin kick. I got booted in the nuts. Some long-haired mosher, such as myself at the time, reached out into the pit like a Jesus Christ figure, and he looks at me and he shakes his head in disapproval. We both made a metal psychic bond over what was a ridiculous behaviour in this mosh pit, but it was completely outside of what I was used to. Anyway, the night continued. It was a push party through and through, you know, a lot of metal bands. It was headlined by the Black Dahlia Murder, and yeah, it was a good night. Anyway, from there I turned up to a festival, yeah? And this festival was headlined by a band called Gallows. Gallows was still fronted by Frank Carter at this time. Great front person, a lot of attitude, a lot of character, a lot of fun. I didn't know anyone else on the bill. There was a fair amount of UK hardcore bands and so on and so forth. Anyway, within early of the day, the pit opens. I'm like, whoa, I've never seen anything like it. The pit opens. I get a fist straight to the throat, right, for attempting to participate in this. Not with intention, just through naivety. It put me out for the day. I continued watching bands, but I wasn't involved no more. It's not fun getting a full force hammer to the throat, right? That was uncomfortable. In the same weekend of this festival, I was standing aside and some guy comes in out of nowhere and just swings his leg into the crowd and kicks me in the stomach. It was painful, right? But I was young, and this is the point I'm trying to make here, right? Because I'm gonna counterbalance this. I was given such an intense rush of adrenaline in the face of this new experience that I had been punched in the throat. I had been kicked in the stomach, and of course earlier I'd been booted between the legs, which wasn't comfortable, but that was less of a, that was like a one-off at that particular event. It was a bit of a weird occurrence, but this was like at this other event, this was like people were dancing and got the dancing shoes on, and they were doing all these spin kicks, doing all these windmills and whatnot, and the idea that I could have been physically harmed lit a fire in my stomach and essentially created this chase of a dragon that eventually simmered down as I got older, because I could not feel the same experience really from that point there on, or at least in the years to come, But it's offensive. It's not right to just go and quite literally assault a member of the audience under the guise of moshing, right? I don't think I was targeted during that particular example. I mean, it definitely does happen, and over the years to come, which we'll talk about, people do target people. More than likely, bullies target smaller people. It's never the vice versa, right? So we'll talk about the ego-centric side of things and how, it's a bit odd, but I adored that experience, and that gave a great talking point to me and my friend who attended that event and said, "Do you remember that? That was frightening." All these kids were older than us. The bands were older than us. It was really cool. We were now involved in a community that was very well different to what the general... I mean, I was seeing bands like Dream Theater. I mean, don't get me wrong. I saw these death metal bands. I saw Suffocation, Burning the Masses, Aborted. I was into flipping Dream Theater and stuff like that. Saw Porcupine Tree, and then suddenly, I'm getting borderline assaulted at an event for the sake of somebody getting involved in a breakdown or a riff. It was a fantastic experience, and from there on, I just became very well involved in that. Now, as an older man, right, nowadays, relative to what I was, I do see it, and you do think, bloody hell, you've clearly got nothing to lose to be able to act in such a manner, because right now I appreciate my health a little bit more, and blah-de-blah-de-blah. But you start to see a divide as far as how these behaviours manifest when you go to a live event. And if you don't really know what I'm on about and you're still listening at this point, well, thank you first and foremost. But this is a very niche sort of pocket of information and live event behaviour I'm talking about, so I do understand. But I do a lot of speaking in regards to hardcore and hardcore adjacent music, whether that be mosh metal, and you see these happen at crossover thrash events and like slam death metal events and stuff. It does, and I think it's more popular than ever, in all fairness, people acting like this at shows in this particular way. We had Dying Fetus starting to play like more hardcore festivals and stuff now, which has been a great big comical experience reading the comment sections on these videos. But I continued going to hardcore events, and you found a separation between people who were genuinely moshing, so just, letting off some steam, having the time of their life, and just happening to make connection with the crowd just due to their movement, due to where they were going, and you had some people who, put a bit of a persona on and got a rush out of the intimidation of the crowd. Oh, I'm going to run up and scare these people. I've got no intention of like touching them, but I'm going to swing my arm over the top of them and it'll frighten them and so forth, right? I mean, that's a bit sad. That is a bit sad, and that's sort of like the behaviour that gives it all a little bit of a bad rep, because it just looks a bit weak and it's a bit flimsy, and it's not people just like kicking off, and just if someone happens to be in the way, so be it. And I have some sort of psychological perspective that these kids had been the ones who'd been picked on And now they're coming to events dressed like the culture of kids who picked on them, i.e. over here in England. We had the chav culture, which is as strong as ever in all fairness. Kids into bassline music, grime and so on and so forth. I mean, chav and grime isn't necessarily, you know what I mean, alike, but you know where I'm coming from. The more streetwise kids who come from like working class backgrounds, right? They start coming up dressed in these tracksuits, dressed with these baseball caps and stuff, even though that wasn't them. That was the kid who bullied them in high school. And they start coming to these events and they start behaving like these kids because now they've got a place to flip the script, per se. So that's fascinating. And man, yeah, the rush you got, the electricity you received, once you spend a little moment sort of involved in these local independent shows, I mean, it happens less so in the larger scale events because, of course, you've got security and you're going to get kicked out of a venue, and it tends to be a little bit more problematic. But at these local independent shows, you really didn't know what could kick off. I've been to events where people have misbehaved and there's been a tension in the room, in particular like beatdown events, but not because there's a lot of persona and there's a lot of ego. So there's already a pre-existing tension, a thickness within the air whilst the supporting acts are playing, and nobody's really moving because it's not a jam-packed venue, but there's enough people there to sort of, you know, get the party started and stuff. But there's such a stigma to this style of music that if you are to dance, you kind of have to create a a full contact sport of it and so forth. And so it builds and builds until somebody breaks the seal. I seen some act, Prowler, London band, which put out a record called Strictly 3.5, and it's a good record. It's a hard record. Ruction Records put them out, and not many people were getting into the zone up until the headline, until they played. Some guy starts moshing, big lad just dashes him on the floor. From there, it was. I wouldn't necessarily say it was a frightening experience because I'd have a foot in it for a moment, but it reignited that feeling I had when I was first getting into this style of music, and I got kicked and I got hit, and I'm like, holy shit, like what? I have to now pay attention to the crowd as opposed to the band. This is like so back to front to what I'm used to. But it reignited that spark, and that's why I'm in complete defense of it. But let's talk about the flip side, right? I don't need to go into too much detail because it's someone else's business and whatnot. But people have like lost arms and stuff. Years back, some guy locally got kicked. He got kicked here, and it ignited some pre-existing issue, and he literally had to get his arm cut off, which is extreme, but it's the reality of such. So it's all fun and games as far as the electricity, but shit can hit the fan, man. Shit can hit the fan, especially when people's egos get involved, and if somebody gives a little bit of a shove back to the person who is putting on a bit of an act in the pit. There's countless people who have established a reputation of being, less than friendly when it comes to their particular style of dance. And it sounds extreme from the outside looking in, but when you catch the feelings it provokes as a young, rebellious man, and I say that because why wouldn't you be a young rebellious man if you're interested in hardcore and punk adjacent music? It is your culture. It is the exact frequency you are looking for, right? It only amplifies and intensifies that experience. Pit beef is great and I love to see it. I don't like to be a part of it. I don't want to be a part of it. I've gotten myself into many issues when I was younger, and the last experience I had was at Discharge. Believe it or not, Discharge is a band that you should be able to have a laugh and sort of, you know, go for a bit of a mooch for, but in this particular circumstance, it attracted a crowd which was just a bit more generalized, you know, because as much as they are the hardcore band, it's flipping Discharge, you know, they're also large to such a degree that you're going to attract a more generalized audience, and that person might not want their pint being knocked out of their hand when you're doing what you're accustomed to and used to in the exact same venue, you know, especially if it's in front of their significant other or so on and so forth. I mean, it opens up so much room for thought. I don't really get involved no more because I got too much to lose. I do like a little bit of a dance and whatnot, but all of that, you know, swinging for the crowd stuff isn't the same no more. When I was living at home and, you know, rebellious and sort of got a rush off of the idea of winding someone up, although I genuinely didn't want no trouble. I think that's the case for most of these people. They don't really want trouble. Nobody wants trouble, but everybody wants to look like they're, you know, larger than life and someone they're not. And in a gangster rap sense, the music that some of these bands create, the lyrical content, it's all nonsense. There's this tough guy persona that is projected onto the crowd through the lyrical content and the sound of these bands, and none of them are really living this stuff. There's a band called TRC. They did a tune. I forgot what tune it was in particular, but one of the main hooks was just like, "Are you living your lyrics?" Because nobody really is, man. In this hardcore stuff, it's very hard to find truthful content within the lyrical content when it comes to that tough guy stuff. And nobody really wants that energy in that front door. I don't. I gave up on that sort of stuff, but that's a little rant and a ramble. I could go more direct into, you know, specific experiences and stuff, which I'm more than happy to do so. But man, the youthful, explosive, and volatile energy that I initially experienced as I started to peel the layers as to what was hardcore, from generalized hardcore dancing to more actual, you know, you've got these local, well, I say local, you've got these European independent DIY artists who the outside world doesn't know, but the little community knows, and they're coming in, and so the local circuit has to put on a bit of a show for them, and everyone's excited because it's the weekend and we've got a hardcore event on, and people start kicking off and stuff. Bro, that was so exciting, you know. And now it's better in the US and stuff. Over here in England, I'll go to an event and all the kids in the bands are younger than me, man. I can't take that serious no more. I can't connect with that. You know what I mean? I want to hear some old guy talking about how he's pissed off that he ain't got enough time in the world to do what he needs to do because he's got all of these responsibilities and circumstances. I don't want to hear no 21-year-old kid in a windbreaker talking about knives and stuff like that. Shut the heck up, man. I can't get behind that no more. But that's a little ramble about the circuit and some experiences I've had. Obviously, a little bit vague and generalised, but we'll go into a little more detail in due time, people. I'm signing out. One love.